Stretching across the north of England from coast to coast runs a line of stone that once marked the very edge of the civilized world. For roughly 73 miles, from the shores of the North Sea in the east to the Irish Sea in the west, the Romans built a continuous wall across the entire width of Britain, a barrier of stone and turf, studded with forts and towers, guarded by thousands of soldiers, dividing the empire from everything beyond. This was Hadrian's Wall, the most heavily fortified frontier in the entire Roman Empire, the place where Rome, the master of the known world, finally said, "This far and no further." Beyond the wall lay the wild, unconquered north, the lands the Romans never tamed. Before it lay the warmth, the roads, the wine, and the law of the Roman world. And along the wall itself lived a remarkable community of soldiers and civilians, drawn from every corner of the empire, eating, drinking, praying, fighting, and writing letters home at the literal end of the world. Today, we are going to walk the length of Hadrian's Wall, from one sea to the other, and discover what it was, why it was built, and what life was really like on the edge of Rome. Using advanced AI trained on the archaeology of the wall and its forts, the extraordinary collection of wooden writing tablets discovered preserved in the mud at one of its fortresses, the Roman accounts of Britain, and the work of the historians and archaeologists who have studied this frontier for centuries, we have reconstructed the world of Hadrian's Wall. It begins with an emperor who made a radical decision about the limits of power. The wall takes its name from the Emperor Hadrian, who ordered its construction beginning around the year 122 AD. Hadrian was a different kind of emperor, where his predecessor had pushed the empire to its greatest extent through relentless conquest. Hadrian believed the empire had grown too large to keep expanding forever. He spent much of his reign traveling the vast frontiers of the empire, and everywhere he went, he worked to consolidate, to define, and to defend the borders rather than to extend them. In Britain, the Romans had conquered the south, but had never managed to subdue the far north, the rugged, mountainous land of fierce tribes that the Romans found more trouble than it was worth. So Hadrian drew a line. He ordered a great wall built across the narrow neck of the island to mark the permanent edge of the province, to control movement across the frontier, and to project the overwhelming power and permanence of Rome to everyone on both sides. The wall was, in part, a military barrier, but it was also a statement written in stone across an entire country. This is the edge of the world that Rome rules, and Rome rules it absolutely. The scale of the construction was staggering. 3 legions of the Roman army, tens of thousands of skilled soldier builders set to work, and over a number of years they raised a continuous wall across the whole width of Britain. In its main eastern section, the wall was built of stone, broad and high, perhaps 15 feet tall or more, with a walkway along the top. In the west, it was at first built of turf and later rebuilt in stone. But the wall was far more than a single barrier. It was an integrated defensive system. In front of the wall, on the northern side, ran a deep defensive ditch. Behind the wall, on the southern side, ran another great earthwork, marking a controlled military zone. Along the entire length of the wall, at intervals of roughly 1 Roman mile, stood small fortified gateways that we call Milecastles, each guarding a crossing point and housing a small garrison. Between each pair of Milecastles stood 2 small watchtowers, called turrets, so that the entire length of the wall was under constant observation. And at intervals along and near the wall stood the great forts, full Roman military bases, each housing a unit of soldiers, hundreds or even 1,000 strong, with their barracks, headquarters, granaries, workshops, and commanders' houses. The wall was, in effect, a single fortified machine stretched across an entire country designed to watch, to control, and to defend. Now let us walk it from east to west and see what stood along its path. The wall began in the east near the mouth of a great river, at the edge of the North Sea, where a fort guarded the eastern end and the supply port that fed the whole frontier. A major town and legionary base sat near the eastern end, a hub of military power and civilian life. From there, the wall ran westward across the countryside, rising and falling with the land until it reached the most dramatic stretch of its entire course, a line of high, sheer volcanic crags where the wall ran along the very top of the cliffs, looking out over a wild and beautiful landscape, an almost impregnable natural rampart that the Roman builders used to magnificent effect. Along this central stretch stood some of the most famous forts of the wall, whose remains are the best preserved today. Here, archaeologists have uncovered, in extraordinary detail, the headquarters buildings, the commanding officers' houses with their underfloor heating, the barrack blocks where the soldiers lived, the granaries with their raised floors to keep the grain dry, the workshops and the bathhouses where the soldiers, even at the edge of the world, enjoyed the Roman ritual of the baths. And perhaps most remarkable of all, at one fort, the waterlogged ground preserved something almost unique. Hundreds of thin wooden writing tablets, the actual letters, notes, and documents of the people who lived there, giving us a window into their daily lives that survives almost nowhere else in the Roman world. Those writing tablets reveal who actually lived on the wall, and the answer is surprising. The soldiers who garrisoned Hadrian's wall were not, for the most part, Romans from Italy. They were auxiliary troops drawn from all across the vast Roman Empire, units raised in what is now Belgium and the Netherlands, in Spain, in the Balkans, in Syria, in North Africa, and beyond. Men from the warm shores of the Mediterranean and the deserts of the Near East found themselves posted to the cold, wet, windswept frontier at the northern edge of the world, as far from home as they could possibly be. The writing tablets capture their world in vivid, human detail. There are duty rosters and military reports. There are requests for supplies. There is a famous letter, one of the oldest known documents written in Latin by a woman, in which the wife of one commander invites the wife of another to her birthday party, a warm, personal note from the edge of the empire nearly 2,000 years ago. There is a letter from home enclosing a gift of socks, sandals, and underwear, a parent worrying about a son freezing on the northern frontier, a concern any parent would recognize today. There are notes about the weather, about beer running low, about the daily business of running a fort at the end of the world. These tablets transform the wall from a cold ruin into a living community of real people, with families, friendships, worries, and birthday parties. And around the military forts grew up civilian settlements. Wherever Roman soldiers were stationed for years on end, with their pay and their needs, a community of civilians gathered to serve them. Outside the gates of the wall forts sprang up villages of traders, craftsmen, innkeepers, and others, selling goods, providing services, brewing beer, and offering all the comforts a soldier's pay could buy. Soldiers formed relationships with local women and raised families, even though formal marriage was for a long time officially forbidden to ordinary soldiers. Temples and shrines stood along the wall, dedicated to a remarkable mix of gods: the official gods of Rome, the gods of the soldiers' distant homelands, local British deities, and exotic Eastern mystery cults, including the worship of a bull-slaying god popular among Roman soldiers across the empire. The wall was not just a line of soldiers. It was a thriving, multicultural, multi-religious frontier society, a slice of the entire Roman world transplanted to the misty hills of northern Britain, where a soldier from Syria might worship beside a soldier from Spain, both of them buying their beer from a local Briton, all of them living together on the empire's furthest edge. The wall ran on westward, descending from the high crags, crossing rivers, passing more forts and Milecastles and turrets, until it reached the western end near another great firth, where it met the Irish Sea, and where the defensive system continued for a stretch down the coast with further forts and towers guarding against seaborne raiders. From sea to sea, the whole frontier was watched, guarded, and held. For most of 3 centuries, the wall remained the northern frontier of Roman Britain, manned, repaired, and patrolled, sometimes overrun in times of crisis, and then reoccupied, a constant presence at the edge of the empire. The Romans did, for a time, push further north and build a second, shorter wall of turf, deeper into the north, but they soon fell back to Hadrian's wall, which remained the true and lasting edge of their world in Britain. And then, in the early 5th century, it ended. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled under its own crises, the legions were withdrawn from Britain, and Roman rule on the island came to an end. The soldiers left the wall. The forts fell silent. The great frontier system, manned for 300 years, was abandoned. Over the centuries that followed, much of the wall's stone was robbed away by local people, who used the conveniently cut Roman blocks to build their farmhouses, their churches, and their field walls, so that pieces of Hadrian's wall are scattered, hidden throughout the buildings of the north of England. But much of the wall survived, running across the wild and beautiful landscape, its forts becoming grassy mounds and then, in time, archaeological treasures. Today, Hadrian's Wall is one of the most famous ancient monuments in the world, a protected World Heritage Site, walked each year by people who follow its course from sea to sea, tracing the very edge of an empire that vanished 16 centuries ago. That was Hadrian's Wall, the edge of the Roman world. A line of stone and turf, 73 miles long, thrown across the whole width of Britain by the order of an emperor who decided that even Rome must have its limits. A fortified machine of walls, ditches, towers, Milecastles, and forts, manned for 3 centuries by soldiers drawn from every corner of the empire, surrounded by a thriving frontier society of traders, families, and gods from across the known world. It was the place where the greatest empire of the ancient world drew its line in the earth and declared the boundary of civilization itself. The empire that built it is long gone. The soldiers who shivered on its ramparts, who wrote home for warm socks, who threw birthday parties at the end of the world, have been dust for nearly 2,000 years. But the wall remains, snaking across the hills of northern England, and if you walk it today, along the high crags with the wind in your face and the wild north stretching away before you, you are walking the very edge of Rome, the line where the ancient world ended and the unknown began.